Good morning. This mug felt appropriate, and yes, I will be speaking more about this today. So hi, my name is Melinda, and this is A Web of Stories, and I'm here doing my weekly wrap-up. And what a week it's been. It's like night and day. If you know, you know. So yeah, this week, nothing too exciting happened in my life. My daughter is doing a Girl Scout journey online because she needs to do start her gold award. So we've been kind of tied at home while she's been working on that. But yeah, the weather has been gorgeous here in the Pacific Northwest. I would be filming outside, except the garbage trucks are still going by. So I'm like, we're gonna just stay inside for this one today. But yeah, I will say my mind has been kind of, so it's been a little hard for me to concentrate on reading this week. That's okay. I think that's natural. It's kind of exciting and hopeful, and I feel more hopeful than I have in a long time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm filming this on July 26th. And actually, I'm going to start a little bit into this because I had an NRN this week, which is a not right now. And I'm going to tell you the story about this. So, The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. It's stated, it's like the story starts on July 20th, 2024, but it was written years ago. So that was like the future. And so it was a big thing to start that book on July 20th, 2024. And I was there for it. I started the book. I was so excited. I was ready to go. And it just was the perfect book. It was like what I needed. It fit my mood and everything. And then the next day was July 21st. And that is the day. Well, I had my phone turned off because I was in church. And then on the way home from church, the kids and I stopped by Lowe's, not Home Depot, Lowe's, to pick up a plant, a housewarming gift for a friend. And my daughter said, well, you better check and make sure it's safe for dogs because our friends have dogs. And I turned my phone on and it like blew up with alerts because the time I had my phone off was the time that Joe Biden announced that he would not seek re-election, or he would decline the nomination, and that he endorsed Kamala Harris. I actually got the news that he endorsed Kamala Harris before I got the news that just the way the alerts came in, which was I was confused for a moment. So, I had my moment of real sadness because I think the way Joe Biden was treated through this whole thing was abominable. I mean, Joe Biden being old is not news to anybody. We knew a year ago that he'd be this old in a year. So this kind of stuff, like I'm saying this is how I felt at the moment, because I kind of think the way things worked out, it was okay. But this sort of thing, this should have happened a year ago. It shouldn't happen now. And I think that he was just treated really badly. And I still kind of think that. But, I got my tears out. And I'm a Harris girly. Now, I have always liked Kamala Harris. In 2020, I wouldn't say she was my pick in 2020 because my heart belongs to Pete. His time will come. Pete's time will come. But I've always liked Kamala Harris. And so I'm there for it. So I've been waiting to pull, this mug out until today. You can't see it. I've already got my lipstick stain on it, which is appropriate. But anyway, so that all happened and I'm all excited and it's great. And I have not felt this hopeful since probably, I don't think I've ever felt this hopeful, politically hopeful, because everyone says, I haven't felt this hopeful since 2008. And I'm like, but the thing is, when Obama was running, yes, it was great to have our first African-American president. That would be really exciting. But he was running against John McCain, and John McCain is not a bad guy. Like, John McCain didn't pose an existential threat to America. So the fear, the element of fear was gone. I mean, yeah, there was Sarah Palin. That's a whole other thing. But so even in 2008, this is different. But I just yes. So anyway, so that all happened. And then I found that I could not get myself to pick up Parable of the Sower. I know enough about Parable of the Sower to know what it's about, and that there's a pre-Trumpian, proto-Trumpian thing and all that. I know all that. And I didn't want to go back into that world while I'm feeling like this. So I did not DNF Parable of the Sower. I NRN'd it, not right now. That is, or some people call that a soft DNF. I don't consider that a soft DNF. A soft DNF, well, no, okay, yeah, sure, it's a soft DNF. I like the term NRN. Not right now, I am definitely going to read this book, just not right now, because I want to stay with this buzz. So, yeah. So there's that. That was my NRN for this week. That being said, I did finish 5 books, and I know that sounds like, a couple of these I was reading for a really long time. So even though I was distracted, I probably didn't read as much this week as I normally do. The fact that I finished 5 books is a little bit misleading. So for example, the first book I finished was this one, A Kind of Madness by Uche Okonkwo. This is a short story collection. I actually started it in May, and I had a rotation. My method was, I had 3 short story collections and I was rotating through them. And this is the book that kind of convinced me that I don't want to do that, just because I wish I had read this in a shorter, more condensed period of time. I think it would have been more effective. I really liked this book. I thought this was a really strong debut. I would be interested to read more from this author. But it's hard for me to say because it took, 2 months. It's like 2 months to get through this book. So I've actually changed the way I'm doing my short story collections, and I am doing them one at a time now. So just so you know, things are changing in the short story reading world. But this is basically life in Nigeria, mostly from a female point of view. I really enjoyed it. It was a good book. This was, I believe, an A. Let me make sure. I always forget to I always sometimes forget what rating. Yeah, this was an A. Okay. Oh, I should mention, I did finish 5 books this week, but one of them was book 2 price, so I'm only going to talk about 4. Okay, but the next one I finished was a buddy read with Kim, and this was from my stack of 10 or 12. I'm going to say it's 10, because I think 10 is a good number, because I'm going to continue to do this years to come. My stack of 10 books, my read or die books that I had to read this year or get rid of. And this was Rules of... This was Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. And I realized that Amor Towles is like Jess Walter to me. If you were to describe their books to me, give me a summary of their books, I'm like, okay, that sounds okay. I guess maybe I'll read it sometime. But then when I read their books, I'm like totally into them. No exception here. So this follows Katie, who is a young woman in 1930, I think it's like 3738, mostly 1938. In New York, she lives in a boarding house. It starts with her and her friend Eve and an encounter they have with a young man, and relationships kind of intertwine and morph. And then Katie kind of goes on her own, and so you get more of her life. It's, I don't want to say it's a coming into her own story. I wouldn't say so much as a coming of age story, because Katie is an adult when she gets to this point. I think a lot of the hallmarks that you see in a coming of age isn't here, but I think a coming into her own story is very much here. This is like at one point it comes to a smart, realistic version of The Devil Wears Prada at one point, which I thought was very interesting. I don't think that was an influence at all in this book, but I think that, I know The Devil Wears Prada was based on the author's real experience, so that just tells me that the experience that Towles writes about in this book was probably very accurate, or very realistic. I just love this book. It got me laughing. There were times where I was like, oh! Really surprised me. And this is not the kind of book where you look for big surprises, but it had big surprises in it. And another thing, I want to share this with you, is at one point, Katie gets into reading Agatha Christie. She starts with reading The Peril at End House. I had to work and figure out which one it was, but it was The Peril at End House. And she continues to read Agatha Christie. And then I want to read this. This is the first 2 chapters, or first 2 paragraphs of chapter 20. And I think it describes Agatha Christie and Agatha Christie's books perfectly, and you know I'm an Agatha Christie person. I read a lot of Agatha Christie that fall of 1938, maybe all of them. The Hercule Poirot's, the Miss Marples, Death on the Nile, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, Murders on the Links at the Vicarage, and on the Orient Express. I read them on the subway, at the deli, and in my bed alone. I lied, it's 3 paragraphs. You can make what claims you want about the psychological nuance of Proust or the narrative scope of Tolstoy, but you can't argue that Mrs. Christie fails to please. Her books are tremendously satisfying. Yes, they're formulaic, but that's one of the reasons they are so satisfying. With every character, every room, every murder weapon feeling at once newly crafted and familiar as rote, the role of the post-imperial at once newly crafted and familiar. Wait, I messed that up. Let me start that paragraph over again. This is the trouble of reading aloud. Yes, they're formulaic, but that's one of the reasons they are so satisfying. With every character, every room, every murder weapon feeling at once newly crafted and familiar as rote, the imperial post-imperialist uncle from India here being played by the spinster from South Wales, the upper shelf of the gardener, South Wales, and the mismatched bookend standing in for the jar of poison on the upper shelf of the gardener shed. Mrs. Christie doles out her little surprises at the carefully calibrated pace of a nanny dispensing sweets to the children in her care. But I think there is another reason why they please, a reason that is at least as important, if not more so, and that is that Agatha Christie's universe, everyone gets what they deserve. Perfect! That is why I like Agatha Christie, and it's in this book, Amor Towles, 5 stars. I was trying to think if all of Amor Towles' books that I've read. So I have not read Table for Two yet because I was waiting to read this, because included in Table for Two is a novella about a character from this book. It's Eve, not my favorite character. So I was waiting to read this before I read Table for Two. I think that the Lincoln, I can't remember what I gave the Lincoln Highway, but I think The Gentleman in Moscow was an A+ for me. Lincoln Highway may have been a 5-star. I can't quite remember. This one was definitely a 5-star. This is my favorite of the Amor Towles books that I have read. I'm still thinking about it. And that's what makes a good 5-star book. So there, I had a 5-star. Okay, let's skip over the next one. And then I read, okay, I got to get the author's name on this one. One sec, scooch over. I read Diavola by Jennifer Marie Thorne. So this came recommended first by the Mild Rumpus and then by Meredith on the Currently Reading podcast. And I saw that Leandra at Leandra the TBR Zero also highly recommended it. This is a horror novel. And it's about this kind of really dysfunctional family that has a little family reunion, a family trip to Tuscany, and they all stay in this villa. And if that was not terrifying enough, the villa's haunted. You're told through Anna is the main character. She's the viewpoint character. And her family is horrible. That is the worst. It is just a terrible family. And it's terrible in a way that is realistic. Like, okay, Cinderella comes off the top of my head, which I know is a really bad example, but that's what's there. Yeah, and the wicked stepsisters and all that, but it's not really realistic. This one's realistic. And the family dynamics and her not fitting in and all that was actually, and I'm not trying to badmouth my family here, but kind of related to it. So I was getting really amped up by this book. And there were times where I'm like, I have to put this book down because I am so amped up by it. But I'm not sure if I was amped up by the horror element, because the horror element is actually quite good. Or the family element. Probably a combination of both. Really enjoyed this book. Really enjoyed it. You have to be okay with like dysfunctional family toxicity, because that's there in this, and I know that's not what some people want to read. I apparently like it, I don't know, but it is there. I ended up giving this an A. What kept it from being an A+ for me is the fourth act, the first half of the fourth act dragged for me. And I don't want to go into what was different about that or anything, because I think that would all be spoiler, but there is a section, if you divide the book into fourths, the beginning of that last fourth, there's a section that just, it dragged. I kind of started to lose momentum. So that's why I gave it an A and not an A+. And then, what was my right here? Oh, and then I finally finished, this is another one I've been working on for a long time, an audiobook. And the reason why this took me so long is because I did a lot of my book 2 prize reading for this term on audio, so this kind of got shuffled to the back, and my children are making as much noise as possible, but you know, you're used to that if you see my videos. But I finally finished this, and that is The Sentence is Death by Anthony Horowitz. This is the second in his Hawthorne and Horowitz series. First thing, and I didn't realize this when I read it the first time, the narrator, and I didn't write down who the narrator was, I don't think. I should probably go back and fix that. The narrator sounds just like Hugh Grant. Rory Kinnear, that's who was it. It was Rory Kinnear. He sounds just like Hugh Grant for some reason. I think I know who Rory Kinnear is. I'll have to look him up. I think he's an actor that I've seen in other things. And now every time I see him, I'm gonna think Hugh Grant. Anyway, I gave this one a B+, and I'm a little qualified with that because I did take breaks from it to listen to the Book 2 prize books. The momentum did suffer, not because of the book, but because of how I was doing it. So there is that. It just kind of felt a little lightweight compared to some of the other Anthony Horowitz books that I have read. But I really enjoyed it. It was a great one for listening to while you're at the gym or just doing stuff around the house. Sometimes mysteries don't work well for me on audio, more serious mysteries. Cozy mysteries are great on audio. And this is not a cozy mystery. I would not at all call this a cozy mystery, but it's got sort of that same, it's easy to follow the threads. And Anthony Horowitz does actually a really good job of making it easy to follow the threads, but still having a complicated plot. So yay, Anthony Horowitz. But I enjoyed it. I think I have all but the last one currently in my Libro queue, so I'm going to continue on with this, but I enjoyed it. So those are 4 of the 5 books I finished this week, in my week of being so excited for the first time in forever, I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. Anyway, that was my week. And so yeah, let me know what you were reading this week. Yeah, and you know, I share my life with you, and sometimes my life and my reading life go into areas that sometimes people don't like to see videos of, and feel free to skip my videos if that's the way you feel. But there you go. Also, maybe. There you go. That's it. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.